welcome to episode 185 of the Layton Fitness Podcast. Now, in this specific episode, we'll be discussing why I hate clean eaters. And the reason why I hate clean eaters, I used to be a clean eater myself. Throughout my late teens and early 20s, I was just obsessed with eating clean. I really wanted to do whatever it took to achieve my physique goals, and because of that I just basically focused on eating whole foods, so minimally refined, single ingredient whole foods, and I wouldn't have any processed food at all. Or if I did have any processed food, I would feel extremely guilty. I sometimes would binge on that, and the cycle would just continue. I didn't have a healthy relationship with food at all. Interesting enough, when I was at sixth form, there was a running joke in the class and everyone kind of basically guessed my lunch, and they'd all say chicken, brown rice and broccoli, and guess what? They were absolutely right. I used to bring that in every single day, and that would be in a Tupperware container. I would have half for lunch and then half at break, and that would be two of my meals throughout the day. My first job working in a book warehouse, I used to have whey protein, peanut butter, water mixed in a Tupperware container. Again, I'd have two meals there, and honestly I absolutely stunk just because there was so much fiber in the oats. And to be honest, my physique didn't look that great despite just focusing on whole food, just focusing on minimally refined single ingredient whole food. My physique didn't look that good. And what's the reason for that? Now, the reason for that is, if your goal is fat loss, you must be within a calorie deficit. You must be burning more calories than you're consuming. Otherwise, you're not going to lose any body fat whatsoever. And even though I was focusing on whole food, I wasn't creating a calorie deficit. It doesn't matter how much whole food or clean food you're eating. If you're not within a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose any weight whatsoever. And that's why it's critical just to realize that foundational principle, the calorie deficit, must be in place first. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be having mainly whole food. You should be having 80-90% of your intake from whole food, because ultimately that's going to mean you're going to have all your micronutrients met, you're going to get sufficient fiber, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can't have some processed food, 10-20% of your intake in moderation, because that's going to give you more variety. It's going to allow you to have a healthy relationship with food. It's going to allow you to basically have some of those foods you're craving, but in moderation. So that's why I really do strongly recommend a more flexible approach in my diets and with my clients and myself, focusing on the calorie deficit, the most important factor for fat loss, still having mainly whole foods, so that's still dominating the diet, and then 10-20% of your intake from whatever you want. Now, there's a really good quote, I can't remember where I heard this from, but no foods are good or bad, there's just good or bad diets. And that really does allow you to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is looking at the whole diet, looking at, okay, 89% of your intake whole food, 10-20% from whatever you want, as opposed to looking at foods in isolation, because you might have, say, half a pizza for one evening a week, yet the rest of your week is perfect with regards to lots of whole food, etc. So people would judge that pizza and say it's bad, but actually when you look at the whole diet, you see the bigger picture. If they're in a calorie deficit, mainly having whole food, lots of fruits and vegetables, why can't they still have that in moderation? So thank you very much for listening. Hopefully this has really opened your eyes about clean eating and why it's not the key to fat loss. The key to fat loss is the calorie deficit. Thank you very much for listening. I'll look forward to speaking to you next week. If you're still yet to subscribe to the podcast, please do, so you don't miss an episode, as these come out every single week. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you soon.